The bottom three, which would be remember, understand, and apply, are the lower order thinking skills. That's basically memorization and then using information in a situation. When you get up to the top three, which is analysis, evaluate, and create, you're actually building upon those lower order thinking skills to get students to expand their cognition and use that information in new ways. So this more complex usage of information is more difficult. That's why I call it higher order thinking skills, but it's really, really valuable for getting depth and breadth of knowledge and getting students really engaged in a topic. A couple examples are up here on the screen. For example, you might have a student judging if information is good or bad. For example, they might be looking at the source of an information, and is this a good source or is it a bad source? Or they might have to assign a value to an object or to information or to someone's opinion. And if you're giving a value to something, you have to kind of justify why you give that value to something. Finally, the top level of higher order thinking skills is creating. And that can be actually very, very, very closely tied to critical thinking, because you might be finding new information, creating new ideas, and then changing your viewpoints. And if you want students to be independent thinkers or reflective thinkers, which is part of critical thinking, being able to change their viewpoints is a very important skill. So you've probably seen, sorry, here we go. My computer is not responding. There we go. You've probably seen something like this before. This is Bloom's Taxonomy revised. The remembering, understanding, applying is the lower order thinking skills. Analyzing, evaluating, creating, the higher order thinking skills. But something that's really, really, really cool about Bloom's taxonomy is you have these verbs that are associated with each level. And I'll be focusing on the higher order thinking skills because that's what we try to supplement in our prints at Tokai. So for example, analyzing, I hope you can read this on your screens, but it has examples like compare and contrast, differentiate information, experimenting, questioning, and testing. Evaluating, appraising information or items, defending your opinions, supporting your opinion, giving value to things. And of course, creating, constructing something, designing something, formulating plans, and things like that. These are very, very, very valuable verbs, and this is not an exhaustive list at all. If you go online and type in Bloom's taxonomy verbs, you'll see a ton of different resources out there to help you start designing a Bloom's taxonomy kind of inspired classroom. So when we use higher order thinking skills, we're actually asking students to manipulate information in their mind, not just recall and say regurgitate it onto a test, but actually manipulate it. So they're combining two sources of information. They might be integrating multiple sources of integration together, or information together to get a new idea. Analyzing the constituent parts of something to see if it's good or bad, giving and evaluating that item, judging for value or not, all sorts of things. It's really, really, the sky's the limit when it comes to Bloom's taxonomy and the verbs that we can use in our classrooms. But this gives me a good chance to segue into critical thinking, because the way I like to think of high order thinking skills, it's really kind of the foundation or the building blocks of critical thinking, because you can't do critical thinking without higher order thinking skills. If you're going to be doing research and then evaluating information and then changing your opinion on something or supporting your opinion on something, you're going to be using all of those higher order thinking skills. So I like to think of it as critical thinking is higher order thinking skills in action or put into action on a certain situation. So that brings me to critical thinking. This is not again, not a complete list, but this is how we like to look at it at Tokai University. We want our students asking good questions. And what that means is we want them not only asking shallow or surface questions, but digging deeper into information and getting people to give more information about their opinions, their likes, their dislikes, and things like that. If they don't know enough information about a subject, we want them digging deeper, doing some research into that subject so they can talk with some authority when they give, so for example, if they do a debate in a class or if they write a paper. Critical thinking is also problem solving, task-based learning, problem-based learning, giving them a task to do and letting them figure it out. They have to use critical thinking to do that. Finding their own information. One thing that we really like our students to do is not just take what the textbook or the internet or Facebook says at face value, doing a little bit of their own research, seeing if they can find similar information or if they find different information. Why is that? Also, logical fallacies. We do ask our students in our second year to kind of start thinking about logical fallacies and avoiding faults in logic. So we want them thinking well, asking good questions. And once you have that kind of foundation for critical thinking, you can start defending your opinion. But at the same time, we want them being a little bit more reflective, realizing their own biases, and of course, hopefully realizing biases of other people as well. And once you find all this information, asking good questions, problem solving, if you have a reason to, being independent and strong enough to adjust your views if you need to. So again, to me, this is basically applying higher order thinking skills to a specific situation, be it problem solving, be it research, be it asking good questions. So I'd like to give you a working definition of critical thinking. So I usually don't like reading slides, but I'm going to read this to you, and you can read along with me. The ability to think clearly and rationally about what to do or what to believe, which includes the ability to perform reflective and independent thinking. Now, to me, this is just quintessential critical thinking. We want them being independent. We want them being reflective. We want them to be rational and have the ability to think clearly. And if you put that back onto this, what is critical thinking list, you can see how they come together. Thinking clearly is asking good questions, digging deeper into a subject, thinking rationally, avoiding faults in your logic, defending your opinions, reflective thinking, asking good questions of yourself. Why do you feel that? Realizing your own biases, adjusting your views. Independent thinking, of course, we want students to be independent thinkers, finding your own information with research and solving problems. So to me, this is what we strive for in our first and second year reading and writing courses at Tokai University. So how do we put this into action in our classbooks, or basically why? Why are we doing this? Well, there are a lot of really, really good textbooks out there. However, I have yet to find a perfect one, honestly. So there is no all-encompassing textbook out there. There are so many majors, so many interests, so many hobbies that students have, and the needs that they have of English, that one textbook, if it was to service every student in the world, would be incredibly huge. So we need to supplement. Our students have different needs. You have physics students or psychology students. They're going to need a little bit different of focus. The information that you present those students should be tailored a little bit toward their interests and their studies. So we want to go beyond the textbook, again, because the textbook cannot be all-encompassing of all the different things that students need. So we can help customize their experience and build needed skills. We do this by using critical thinking as educators. So today I hope to kind of walk you through the process of our critical thinking of a textbook unit, and then show you how we made the supplemental prints to tailor the student's experience. Again, we'll be looking at basic level today and a little bit of advanced as well. So how do we evaluate a unit? Well, we try to look at it from a couple of different lenses or viewpoints, if you will. Higher order thinking skills. So basically, what cognitive skills is the unit asking the students to perform? The critical thinking. What does a unit ask the student to do in a critical thinking aspect? Are they forming opinions? Are they doing research? Are they justifying their opinions? What kind of actions in the activity sections of a unit are they performing? And of course, what kind of knowledge are they gaining from that unit? And how is it utilized throughout that text? So with this in mind, we can have a good idea of how we want to design a supplement to expand the higher order thinking skills into skills that may or may not be present in a text. We can give the students a chance to deepen the critical thinking aspects. If it is very light in the textbook or non-existent for, say, a basic level textbook, we can give them a chance to kind of dip their toes into critical thinking a little bit. And then diving deeper into the theme of the unit. Diving deeper or even changing it a little bit to make it a bit more well-rounded. And again, as always, we want to apply these higher order thinking skills to a new situation. Now, I mentioned looking at it from the viewpoint of higher order thinking, critical thinking, action performed, and knowledge utilized. How do we do that? Well, Rex here of Iowa State University made this fantastic figure. It's a guide, basically, along two dimensions. He has the knowledge dimension and the cognitive processes dimension. And I'll blow this up here for you a little bit, but this is how we evaluate a unit. So along the knowledge dimension, what kind of information is the book asking the student to know and to use? Is it factual information, conceptual information, procedural information, or metacognitive information? Then on the right side, you have cognitive process dimension, which is just Bloom's taxonomy revised. Remember, understand, apply, which are the lower order thinking skills. Analyze, evaluate, and create, which are the higher order thinking skills. But what he did, which is so cool to me, is that where they intersect, for example, factual information and remembering, you might ask students to list information. So you can actually see, if you look at a unit from this aspect, what a unit is asking students to do and kind of tick off these little boxes in the middle. So once you find the boxes that are not ticked, well, then you have a good idea of how you want to supplement the unit. So the way I like to look at it is, excuse me, sorry, the knowledge dimension is what we know or what the students are supposed to know in the unit. The cognitive dimension is how we think or the actions we want them to do in the classroom. So I like to think of them as learning objectives with the verbs based on the Bloom's taxonomy. So what students should do to engage that thinking skill. And then the knowledge that they're being asked to gain and apply that skill to. So when you look at a unit that you need to cover, try to analyze it through these two dimensions. See what skills and knowledge a student should use and gain. And then once you find the missing parts, the ones that are not filled in, well, you can use that to kind of aim and focus your supplemental print, which is we found to be very, very useful here at Tokai because, again, not every textbook and not every unit is going to hit every higher order thinking skill or critical thinking skill. So let's go through a unit together. Again, this is from the Unlock series because at Tokai University, the reading and writing courses for first and second year is using the Unlock books. We're going to be looking at the knowledge dimension and the cognitive dimension. What does the book want the students to know? What kind of thinking skills will the student use? So we get hints from the different parts of a unit. For example, the learning objectives, skimming keywords from reading 1 and reading 2. The language development section. Of course, the critical thinking section is going to give you a good idea of what kind of skills they want the student to use. And the activities, you can see what kind of information they're using. So let's just dive into the unit and see what we find. Once we start looking at the unit, we just start at the first page, the learning objectives. So we have, I hope you can see this on your screen, watch and listen, watch and understand a video about people who catch fish in different countries. All right, so we have people. Reading skill, preview a text. Okay, doesn't really help me. Collecting information. All right, could be categorizing, could be all sorts of things we don't really know yet. Grammar, use of verb be, possessive adjectives, write simple sentences, and write a profile. Oh, it's okay. So now we're writing a profile about a person. So I think maybe describing a person, but I keep going. I look at the 2 readings. So these are the readings from the Unit 1 of Reading and Writing, Level 1 of Unlock. A very tall man. All right, so we're describing this person as very tall. He is a farmer. His hobby is watching TV. All right, yeah, so that goes back into the writing a profile about someone. And then down below it, we have friend file, Moeen Ali. We have a profile of this person, like an online type of social media. So we have describing people, others. We're looking at other people, not ourselves, and using adjectives and talking about maybe jobs and things like that. Cognitive dimension so far is just understanding. After that, we look at the language development section. We have brother, daughter, granddaughter, mother, uncle, father, son, sister, aunt. Oh, family members. And again, Sultan is a farmer, probably talking about people's jobs. So we have family, jobs, adjectives, describing people, and so far it's understanding, a little bit of categorizing here with male and female, but pretty basically into the lower order thinking skills so far. Moving on to the critical thinking section, it says at the end of this unit, you're going to write a profile. Look at this unit's writing task in the box below. Write a profile of your family. Okay, so family, maybe family tree, talking about your home, talking about your family's jobs, describing your family member, and it's still describing people or others. It also has some comprehension questions about the reading, about Sultan. So we're looking at also analyzing as well. And down at the bottom, a little bit of metacognitive, but not a whole lot. Just recalling your first name and last name, your date of birth. A little bit of metacognitive, but not so much that I would say put it on my list here. Moving on to the activities, we have describing people, others, adjectives, jobs, family, tree, and home. But now we want them to apply that information in these activities and then analyze information through the academic writing skills down there. I hope that's not too small for you to see. So far, we have describing people, others, adjectives, jobs, family tree, home. Cognitive dimension so far is understand, analyze, and apply. So getting a little bit into higher order thinking skills and pretty focused on the conceptual and factual knowledge of family. So what's next? The question is, how can we expand these higher order thinking skills into critical thinking and give our students a little bit more practice in a focused or customized for their interest way? Well, we come back to this. We want to match up what we already have. For example, and I hope this works, I've never done this in a webinar before. We have understand and factual. So summarizing features of a new product. It's not what we're doing, but you are talking about your families. And you can just do that for as many squares here in the middle as you need. It won't let me erase. Hopefully that will go away. So once you get through all that, you can start designing a supplemental print for your students that will go further into higher order thinking skills and critical thinking. A couple options that we had looked at with my team, but we did not end up going, could be categorization. So moving further into categorization, not just for male and female, but actually going through age, gender, job, all sorts of different metrics. We could also rank family members, going further into the higher order thinking skills spectrum, but it could be like oldest to youngest, or a little bit more dangerously, favorite to least favorite. And if you're going to give opinions about ranking and things like that, don't forget to justify your answers. So always encourage students to justify their answers. What's your favorite food? I like pizza. Why? It's delicious. Why do you think so? Get a conversation going. So this is what we ended up deciding on at our curriculum. We wanted to move into more metacognitive knowledge dimension. So knowing yourself and looking at evaluating and categorizing. So moving even further into higher order thinking skills into evaluating. How we did this was personality. So we went from describing others to describing yourself, metacognitive aspect of thinking. And from the lower order thinking skills in analyzing to more analyzing, categorizing, giving your opinion about something, and then justifying why you think that. A little bit of critical thinking. Just first unit for basic level students, dipping their toes into that critical thinking area. And this is what we came up with. So I'll give you a zoomed in view here in a minute, but it says RW Basic Critical Thinking Activity 3. So you can imagine we actually have quite a few different prints for our students and the teachers to use. We do show the CT skills that we want the students to use. We want them to explain something, we want to justify their answers, and to analyze themselves. And as you'll see here on the next slide, they actually have to categorize themselves as well. So we start this print with, think about your hobby, favorite food, whatever. And you might be thinking to yourself, wait, that's not really personality. And you would be correct. But if you remember, the whole unit was mostly talking about other people, other people, other people, other people. We wanted to start getting the student to change their mind into thinking about themselves. And a good way to do that, of course, is thinking about something that you like to talk about. So we have my favorite blank is blank. It could be my favorite food is pizza. My favorite sport is soccer. I love soccer because it's exciting. I hate volleyball because I don't like getting hit in the face with volleyball. I don't know. Anything would be fine. This is very, very free. Just gets them thinking about themselves. The very next section actually says, what kind of personality do you have? And this is before they actually read about different personality types. So we just want them to pick one adjective and tell us why they think so. Again, analyze yourself, categorize, I'm not really categorizing yet, but explaining what you think about yourself and then justifying your answer because so the example here we gave our students, I think I am a hardworking person because I study hard every day. Oh, and you might notice that if you speak or read Japanese, we do have Japanese instructions on these basic level prints. Not for the answer section, but only for some of the more difficult instructions. And our basic level students range anywhere from pre-A1 to maybe a little bit higher A1 at our school. Moving into the next section, we have personality types. So we want them to read, this is for a reading and writing class, read about the three types, the leader, the analyst, the communicator. If they find any words, for example, in leader, stubborn might be a difficult word for our students, we give them a chance to write it down, look it up, and write their own meaning. So once they've gone through the leader, analyst, and communicator and found difficult words and hopefully have a better understanding of each category of personality, we ask them, well, which of the three are you? So which do you think you are and why? So they have to choose one, either leader, analyst, or communicator, and then write a reason. Again, reading and writing class. So for the example we have here, leader. I was the soccer team captain at my school. I always trained hard and never gave up. They're using, you can see, they do not wait to do something. They will try hard to finish everything. Yeah, they're using that vocabulary, and that's okay. That's what we would like to see them do. We like to switch things around a bit. If you've ever designed a questionnaire, you know that sometimes you don't want to say, I can every time. You might want to say, I can, I'm not good at, I can, just to make sure that they're paying attention. That's kind of what we did at the very end. We wanted them to choose one of the personality types that they do not want to be like and why they don't want to be that personality type. Interestingly enough, a little bit of an aside here, some of my students might put, say, communicator as their personality type because I have many friends, they always talk to me, I always have to spend time with my friends. But down on the last section, they might actually put, I don't want to be a communicator because it's difficult to talk to people, or it makes me tired, or I'm introverted, or something like that. So it was actually really interesting to see our students' view of themselves and what they think they are and what they might not want to be. So help me to understand my students a little bit better, and hopefully helps them to understand themselves as well. So how does this fit into our lenses, right? The viewpoints that we use to supplement the textbook. Well, we have analyzing, categorizing, justifying, again, moving up toward the top end of the critical thinking, or high order thinking skills and critical thinking skills. We have metacognitive knowledge about yourself. So that fills in those blanks that the unit did not. And that's the important part. We had a focus, we had something to aim for in our printmaking sessions because we wanted to fill in those squares on the graph that were not filled in. Another example from our curriculum is, this is from our advanced classes. Knowledge dimension is conceptual for humor and comedy. So the cognitive dimension is very, very high. Judging, justifying, synthesizing, creating. So this is actually asks students to think about humor. What is funny? What do you think is funny? And then we give them some examples of farcical comedy. Do they like it? Why? Why not? And then we give them a chance to create. They can make their own comic. And you can imagine the students really enjoy this. They get to make their own farcical comic with examples from the far side. And this is just something that we provide our students for free and hopefully get them to think and expand into a little bit more kind of a culturally infused type of topic, humor. Again, we would use this type of lens to make this print. What does the unit not give us? How can we design the print to provide the students the opportunity to use those cognitive process dimensions and the knowledge dimensions that we didn't really find in the textbook? Really, I mean, the sky is the limit. If you look at a textbook from what is asking the student to know and what is asking the student to do, find those gaps, you really could do almost anything with this. We at Tokai, we're in a center, which means that we have to service all the departments at the same time. So one class might have 4 or 5 different departments, students in it. So you might notice that our prints are not very CLIL-ish or very content-heavy prints, but they do expand the higher order thinking skills and the critical thinking skills of our students. So a couple other ideas I found really, really interesting. I did a workshop earlier this year in Osaka. One of the teachers, we were looking at one of the units with homestay. So the students had to read about the homestay families, where they lived, and choose one. Well, his students were architecture students. So he said, well, I think it would be kind of cool if we had the students not looking at the family so much, but looking at the house behind the family in the photo. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea because you completely dive much deeper into the unit and notice something I probably never would have. So he was asking them to look at the buildings. What kind of architecture was it? What kind of living environment did they think that meant? The living conditions of the family, looking at the family's faces, what kind of personalities they might have, the environment you might be living in if you did go to a homestay there. And he went into much, much, much higher order thinking skills. Like he had them designing new homes or planning their room during the homestay, plans for getting along with the family. All sorts of really, really cool ideas. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I can give you what we do, but I'm not going to know your students as well as you do. You see them day in, day out. You know their personalities, you know their needs, you know their interests much better than I do. So I really, really hope that since you are in the best position to help them with these supplementary prints that hopefully you are going to be making with this methodology, that you have found this very helpful. And thank you so much for coming today. I haven't been nervous at all, which is a lie, but I'm really, really happy to be able to share this with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Thanks a lot, James. That's fantastic.
You're very welcome.
So if anyone has any questions, we've got a few questions already. So thank you, people, for questions there.
You're welcome,
If
Elaine.
you have
You're welcome,
any
Hara.
further, if you have any further questions, please put them into the questions box. So let me kick off with, there's a couple around assessment and evaluation. So how can we evaluate students' critical thinking skills? There's a big question.
Oh, that's a great question. You can do it a couple of different ways. At Tokai, in our second year courses, we look for reaction papers. So we actually get students asking questions about the information presented in a textbook. They do their own research and they have to write a reaction paper on that. Are they using the same types of words, the same types of information? Are they looking at the sources that they found the information from? And then we have a rubric, which maybe I can share with you later on, maybe if that's possible. But they, for example, a low score out of say 3 points might be they did not use any citations for references. They did no research, they're only giving an opinion. 2 points out of 3 might be they used a website, but they didn't really cite any data from that website, but they did try. And of course, full points would be they have done research, they've used data, they're explaining how the data is either the same or different. And we basically make rubrics for that for our students. Now, I would preface that with, if you're going to start introducing critical thinking or higher order thinking skills into class and students are not used to that, please use it as a diagnostic at first. Of course, give it a score, but don't put that score into their grade, because if you suddenly just say, here, do this brand new thing that you might not have done in English before, it's not very fair to the student. So get them gradually working toward using this type of vocabulary, this type of phrases in English, and then once they start getting used to it, evaluating it and putting it on their grade.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question here. Let me read this out. If we do so much classification and categorization in class, I think this is all the terminology around what you were using before, won't it take up too much time and limit communication?
Well, the examples I gave today are for reading and writing class. So we don't really have much time to do like conversation. The classes at Tokai University are split up into listening and speaking classes and reading and writing classes. So they are also doing critical thinking and 21st century skills in our listening and speaking classes, but it really depends on how you approach it. You could easily, I think, adapt the samples that I gave you today to make it much more communicative. And if the unit already has a lot of categorization in it, I would say stay away from categorization unless you're changing the focus quite considerably. Example, the personalities, let's see if I can go back to that real quick. Yeah, the personalities, instead of talking about yourself and writing about yourself, you could actually do this in group discussion. Have them discuss the different types, work together to find out the meanings of the different types, and then give them a couple of famous people and see what kind of people they think they are. You could easily adapt this for a speaking type of activity without hopefully, taking up too much time. And I guess it really depends on levels of the students, of course. and how much of the textbook you're trying to get through in one day.
Okay, thank you. And another question here. This is a bit of a deeper one. Is critical thinking context specific, depending on the norms of the society in which the second language is being taught? I guess if you have students just from one country or one area, then what do you think about that one?
Simple answer, no. To me, and let me explain why. It wouldn't be critical thinking if I didn't justify my opinion, right? I live in Japan. I've been teaching in Japan for about 15 years now. And if you're familiar with the works of Atkinson, he would say that Japanese people don't know how to do critical thinking because it's not in their culture. But if you read the works of Kubota, for example, she would say, "You're crazy. Of course we can." And I would very much come down the side of Kubota because to me, critical thinking is just a natural extension of the executive function of the brain. If you touch something hot and you realize that did not feel good and you think, okay, should I do that again? Well, no, you're thinking ahead. You think, okay, if I do that again, it's going to hurt again. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. And to me, that's kind of like the baby beginnings of critical thinking. Anyone in the world does this. Japanese people in Japanese do this. I think in our educational context, especially here in Japan, they've just never really been asked to do it. And what we're seeing in my school is, I have data from our students last semester who were doing critical thinking in our second year curriculum. They're really finding it interesting because they've never been asked to do this before. So is it context specific? I think critical thinking can apply to debates and to research and to academic skills very, very readily. If you're talking about your favorite food, I don't know. Justifying your opinions about something is a type of critical thinking. But no, I think everyone in the world has the opportunity, the ability, and yeah, they can do it.
We've got one here. It's more of a observation. I think it says thank you very much to you. My problem is that
You're welcome.
students in my class cannot see the difference between conclusion and fact. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that.
Well, I guess it depends on what their conclusion is, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if their conclusion is based in fact, then I guess, yeah, it's very, very similar. But if their conclusion is just their opinion, one of the first things we have our students start off with in the first year is this activity on hobbies. Um, so I wish I had this on my screen. It's just a supplemental activity. We said, what is your hobby? And what is the most fun part of your hobby? And they have to write an answer. Again, I do the reading and writing committee, so a lot of my samples are going to be for reading and writing. You could easily do this speaking. So they have to write their answer. What is the most fun about the hobby? And there's a little arrow under that blank that says why with another blank. So they have to dig deeper into that answer. And then after they say, okay, my favorite hobby is soccer. Why? What is the most fun about soccer? I like soccer because I like winning games. Why? Because I have to work with my team and I have to practice hard. Why? And we do that 5 times for each answer. So we actually get them to think deeper. It's a very, very, very interesting activity for the students because a lot of the conversations, a lot of things that they do are so surface that they never actually have been asked to dig a little bit deeper into why they think so.
So the teacher has to play the role of a 4-year-old child, I think, just
Pretty
constantly
much.
asking.
Why is the sky blue? Type of.
Why?
Yeah. And I think, but that's a great place to start, honestly. That the question of why and digging deeper into your opinions is a great place to start, realizing between opinion and fact. Okay, this is fun. Why? Because I like teamwork. Okay, why do you like teamwork? And then they can actually get down to the origin, hopefully, or closer to the origin of that opinion.
Okay, great. Couple more. I've tried to sort of pick these out because there's a couple of themes. One is not so relevant to university, but I'll say it anyway. If you could give a
Yeah,
very
go for it.
quick answer. Can we use critical thinking skills with children? I think younger learners, basically. There's a few people asked about younger learners.
Yes, I would think so. But keep in mind that, say, your cognitive load is going to be quite high when you're using higher order thinking skills. So if you think of it kind of like a very, very sharp pyramid, you're going to stay in the lower order thinking skills, but you can reach that top of the higher order thinking skills in critical thinking, especially with the questions of why, but they might not be able to use sophisticated language to explain themselves. And that's fine, as long as they're thinking a bit more deeply. I think that's a good way to start for critical thinking. Do you think this advertisement is good? Yes. Why do you think so? Oh, I like the colors. Okay, well, what are they trying to do? Or what are they trying to sell you? And I guess it would depend on the age of the students as well. I mean, junior high, high school students would probably have a much easier time with actual critical thinking than, say, elementary school students. But you bring logic into a classroom very easily. Look at, well, heck, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and a couple of years ago, we were working on pattern recognition, and we put that into English learning as well. So we had like yellow circle, blue circle, yellow circle, blank. And then, okay, what's next? Oh, blue circle. Why do you think so? It was very quite difficult, but we did get to a point where she said there's 2 yellow circles and then 1 blue circle. There's 2 more yellow circles. That's why I think there's a blue circle. And that's kind of, if we start there, it's doable. They're having fun. They're using English. Why not?
Great. Yeah, no, good. Yeah, good introduction at earlier age is not a bad thing. So I think probably time for one last one,
Sure.
and this is the sort of theme of lower levels. I think how can students express their ideas if their vocabulary is not strong enough, or perhaps it's more of a lower level question. This one. Are you there, James?
Hello?
Hi there. Sorry, yeah. Can you hear me
Oh, yeah,
now?
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
can hear
just
you.
lost you for a second. Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
So this is about the. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. I don't know if you heard. How can students
I
express
heard
their?
it.
You go. Okay, good, good.
Yeah,
So sort of lower level
lower
students
level
expressing
students.
their ideas and critical thinking.
Right. They can do it. I can't really think of any examples right now. Um, I recently gave a workshop to the teachers at Tokai University on our critical thinking project book. And even though basic level students do not have sophisticated vocabulary, if they are using vocabulary from the textbook through supplements like these, they're going to have a basis already. And the vocabulary lists inside the book or supplemental vocabulary lists that you might make for your classes, they can use those to kind of as a springboard for their ideas. Now, they don't have to write a horribly convoluted sentence like most academic journal papers maybe, but a simple sentence can still say, I think this because this, and that's really all you need to start looking at justifying your opinions. Or I think this is good. I think this information is not good because I found other information on a website. It's a very simple sentence, but still critical thinking.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, I think that is all we've got time for, but a huge thanks to James for this presentation. Lots of nice comments coming through for you there.